opportunities right across the piece, but I'm not in any way complacent. We have a long way to go yet.
Thank you. Jack Sargeant.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer, and thank you to the Government for bringing forward this statement today. With permission, I'd just like to put on the record that 4 months ago today, we lost a true advocate for women's rights and someone who stood up for women suffering domestic abuse and sexual violence. Yeah. I don't think there's any one of my dad's suits that doesn't have a right ribbon pin badge on, and I'm very proud to be standing here today in the chamber wearing mine. I have 3 questions for the Leader of the House. Firstly, we know my dad supported the White Ribbon campaign and that my colleague Joyce Watson has played a vital part in that with her annual event. Will the Government join me in my campaign to ensure all public service providers in Wales, like the police, like the fire service, follow South Wales Police and Fire Service and Gwent's lead in having white ribbons on their vehicles all year round? Secondly, I also want to pay tribute to RCT Council and all the campaigners that made the announcement that free sanitary products could soon be available to all schoolgirls possible. I know that my colleague Jenny Rathbone just here has been a vital advocate in that as well, and she was working closely with my dad on this issue. So I also wanted to know if the Government will commit to ensuring this is replicated across Wales and help make that happen. And just finally, I'd like to finish with, can I just urge the Leader of the House and all members and staff who work in the Assembly to read Rachel Williams' new book, The Devil at Home. Rachel's story as a survivor of domestic abuse is devastating but truly inspiring, and her story of hope tells us how all of us how you can always find light in the even in the very darkest of times, and she's a true inspiration, and I urge you all to read that book at your leisure. And thank you, Leader of the House.
You Leader of the House.
Absolutely, and I hadn't actually realised it was an anniversary date, but we all very much remember your father's contributions here in the Senedd. He managed to be both amusing and forthright and also passionate and committed on a subject which he clearly cared a lot about, and I'm very proud to have inherited some part of his portfolio and be able to in some small way step into his shoes and take that forward. I do have a great photograph of him actually on talking of gender stereotypes, wearing the worst red high heels you've ever seen in all your life, and I had to support his weight on my shoulders as we tried to walk a mile. It wasn't a mile, it was about 5 steps in somebody else's shoes. I'm not too sure whether I was worse at standing in high heels or he was, but it wasn't a great sight, but it was fun. So it's a fitting tribute and I hadn't realised it. In terms of the White Ribbon campaign, I know that the Cabinet Secretary for Public Services has been working very hard with first line responders and other public services on this, and I'm sure he will be taking it forward. We're very proud of the police for having done what they've done and the multi-agency work that they're undertaking, and are absolutely committed to taking that forward as fast as possible. It's a very important symbol, actually. It's not just about the campaign. It's a very important symbol of the commitment of public services to that kind of equality. And of course, just to remind ourselves of Joyce's work endlessly in this regard as well, just to remind ourselves of that pledge about never committing violence or condoning or being silent in the face of violence. And the White Ribbon is a very public reminder of that pledge, which is very important to have, especially for first responders who are often going into situations where domestic violence is the issue. And in terms of period poverty, as I just said to Sian Gwenllian, we are looking very carefully. I'm absolutely committed to doing something. I'm not yet convinced that one scheme fits every single woman in Wales, so it's just a question of trying to tailor it so that we get it right and to persuade the Cabinet Secretary for Finance that we can afford some of it. I'm sure he's not demurring. But we are committed to doing it, absolutely committed to doing it. And in terms of Rachel Williams' book, I haven't read the whole book, but I've read extracts of it. And one of the things that's absolutely front and centre of our policy in terms of tackling all kinds of domestic violence, sexual violence, is to have the survivor's voice right there in the centre of the policy, so we can understand the effect that it has both during and after and in the recovery phase for all of the victims of that kind of domestic violence. So I certainly am hoping to read it when I do have some leisure time, not too sure when exactly that will be. But I have read extracts of it, and I've heard Rachel talk, actually, and she's a very powerful voice. So we're very keen that our policy takes that survivor voice into account, and in fact, Carl Sargeant, your father was the first to put that right at the centre of our policy, and I certainly will be carrying on in his good footsteps.
Thank you. Michelle.